Hi everybody, last lesson of the week, and this time no new material, just extra practice on factoring completely. So we're going to take what we've learned about that GCF and what we've learned about the T-chart and combine them. First question, the x squared is not all alone, all by itself. So the trick we learned yesterday is to factor out that term. So we're going to divide everything by 2 so that we can get the x squared all alone, all by itself. 2x squared divided by 2, the 2's cancel, leaving us with that x squared. Negative 20 divided by 2 gives us a negative 10x, and the 48 divided by 2 gives us a positive 24. All right, now we're going to set up our T-chart with what's inside the parentheses. We are multiplying to the number that is all by itself with no variable, in this case 24. And we are adding to that coefficient of x, the number that we're multiplying by the x term, which in this case is a negative 10. It's been a while since I've reminded you of that process, so if you get stuck, if you don't remember your multiplication facts, if you can't figure out the positives or negatives, start with 1. 1 times what gives us 24? 1 times 24, that's not going to add to a negative 10. 2 times 12 gives us 24, which has some potential. So let's see what happens. 2 times 12 multiplies to 24. 2 plus 12 gives us 14. How do we multiply to a positive and add to a negative? We need 2 negative numbers. So let's try these with negative numbers. Well, now we're adding to a negative 14, so we're not quite there. What else multiplies to 24? 3 times 8, so we could try negative 3 times negative 8. Negative 3 plus negative 8 gives us a negative 11, so we're really close. 4 goes into 24. Let's try negative 4 times negative 6. And negative 4 plus negative 6 does give us that negative 10 that we were looking for. So as we go back, we're going to keep that y equals. We're going to keep the GCF of 2, and we found that the x minus 4 and x minus 6 were the two values that worked to multiply to a positive 24 and add to the negative 10. Example B, the coefficient of the x squared is 11, so I know I need to divide that out in order to use my T-chart method. Factoring that 11, putting that outside the parentheses. On our first term, those just cancel, leaving me with the x squared. And 44 divided by 11 gives me 4. All right, now this is one where we only have 2 terms. In order to set up our T-chart, we need a third term. So which term is missing? We are missing our x term. We have our x squared term, of course, so that's never missing. We have our constant, the number without the variable that goes on the end, but we don't have that middle term, the x term. So we're going to add our 0x and then set up our T-chart. We're looking for what multiplies to the constant, the number without a variable, which is negative 4. Keep track of those negative signs. And then we added that 0x, so we're trying to add to 0. The numbers we're looking for need to be the same, but opposites in order to add to 0. So 2 times negative 2 gives me a negative 4, and 2 plus negative 2 gives me the 0. Completely factoring this, we're going to keep the 11, keep that GCF. We have x plus 2 and x minus 2 from our T-chart. 2 more. This first one is a little bit challenging because when we look at our x squared term, it looks like it's all alone, but it does have that negative sign, so we have to cancel that as well. Well, how do we cancel a negative? What number are we going to be factoring out or dividing out? As a reminder, if we don't see a coefficient, we're multiplying by 1. So in order to get that x squared all alone, all by itself, and positive, we have to divide everything by a negative 1. Pulling that outside our parentheses, our x squared term becomes positive. our 18x term becomes negative, and our 81 term becomes positive. Setting up our t-chart, we are multiplying to the constant positive 81. We are adding to the coefficient of x, that middle term, which was the negative 18. 1 times 81 is not going to give me 18. 3 does go into 81, 3 times 27. Now that adds to a positive, so in order to multiply to a positive and add to a negative, I need both of my numbers to be negative, which would add to a negative 30. The next number that goes into 81 is 9. 9 times 9, again, in order to multiply to a positive and add to a negative, I need both of my numbers to be negative, and negative 9 plus negative 9 is that negative 18. So for those of you that recognize the shortcut, once you get the same number, you can put the x minus 9 with the square on it right away. I've noticed some of you don't simplify, which is fine. So I'm going to leave this as the x minus 9 times x minus 9 at first. And then when you multiply something by itself, you can simplify that with a power of 2. Again, I accept both answers. If you're not comfortable simplifying, please don't. However, I have noticed some of you who should be comfortable with simplifying aren't. So make sure that if you are capable of it, that you are doing that extra step of simplifying. All right, I put this one last because I'm going to show you another trick for getting this factored without using a t-chart. So for those of you that don't understand what I'm doing, continue that process of adding the 0 and using the t-chart. But we can also factor this with the greatest common factor that we've been practicing. Now in this case, they don't have a number in common, but they do have a variable in common. Both terms have an x on them. So we can divide both terms by an x to factor it out. So I'm going to put the x on the outside, and when you take x squared and divide it by x, you get x. And that second term, the x's cancel each other out, and you're just left with the 3. So for those of you that are capable of understanding and following this, awesome, I just gave you a shortcut. For those of you that I may be lost as I was doing this, I want to remind you how we did this in the first place, because this works too, and you can stick with this method every time. All right, so this one we have an x squared term, we have our x term, but we are missing our constant, our number without a variable. So I'm going to put that 0 on the end. Setting up the t-chart, we are multiplying to 0, the constant, the term with no variable, and adding to 3, the coefficient of x, or that middle term. Of course, to multiply to 0, we need 0. And then to add to 3, we would have 0 plus 3. When we factor this, we put the x plus 0 in parentheses and the x plus 3. So what I taught you guys is you can go ahead and stop here if you're not comfortable with simplifying. Or what happens when you add 0 to x? You get regular plain old x, and then we can bring down that x plus 3. So notice my purple answer from method 1 and my completely simplified answer from method 2 are exactly the same. But method 1 was quite a bit more efficient if you understand how to factor out a variable GCF. We haven't been practicing that. Method 2 is what we have been practicing, and it is okay to continue using that if method 1 doesn't make sense to you. All right, I hope you guys are all doing great. As a reminder, next week is our last week of new material. If you are passing my class at the end of next week, you will be done with distance learning. So I hope you all set that as a goal for yourselves. Take care.